Well, I got a girl and her name is
Stop
Death.
it!
Who dares?
Every time you snap your fingers, everybody disappears! Cut it out!
And you know she's the girl I like best.
It's funny how things change. It used to be that the stars had to align just so to get a comic book movie made that wasn't Batman. And now it's been over a decade since the last good Batman movie. But on the other hand, these days, a litany of Marvel superheroes who used to be very obscure have been propelled into mainstream consciousness. So, it's wild. I'm not one of these guys who only knows what they've seen in the Marvel movies and stuff like that. I remember a time when Deadpool was so obscure that his ongoing series got canceled because of low sales. And now he's everywhere. He's on merch, he's in video games, he's in movies, he's got half a dozen comic books. He's oversaturated now. But there was another character, a villain, who I was surprised that he would never get his due, really, for the longest time. And then the Marvel movies, of course, surprised me. As a kid, I had a set of Marvel trading cards that my mom picked up from the local comic book shop for cheap, and I was fascinated by these characters. This is where I initially learned about so many of the Marvel characters just by looking at these cards and reading the stats on the back and looking up all the information and seeing if I could find maybe a comic somewhere with a little bit more information, stuff like that. But there was one character among all these villains, and these villains, by the way, there were quite a few of them that were kind of terrifying, but there was one that I looked at and it just sent shivers down my spine looking at him. He was a scary dude, and his name was Thanos. Just the name is a lot to take in. Thanos. Kind of harrows your very soul. You see, some Marvel supervillains have some very silly names like Doctor Doom, even though it's a classic villain, but still, come on, Doctor Doom, and Magneto, Magneto, and Super Skrull. So, they're all classic villains, but they're also very silly names, but not Thanos. No. Ooh, fills you with dread when you say it. And when you learn about the guy, when you learn more about him, it really doesn't improve your first impression of him. He's still very scary. The Marvel movies portray Thanos as a being whose planet collapsed because of overpopulation. And so he's obsessed with killing off half the planet so the other half can prosper after the fact. Well, things went much, much differently in the story that the Infinity War movie was based on, called The Infinity Gauntlet, written by Jim Starlin. There's a few notable differences between the movie and the comic. Obviously, the characters were changed because of issues surrounding the rights to use these characters in movies, because of Marvel selling off the rights to make their movies to various studios, way back during the 90s. But anyway, in the comic, Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock and a bunch of Celestials, they all factor in to the story. But another huge difference is, in the comics, Thanos does it for love. You see, Thanos is in love with the cosmic entity Death, and in his courtship of her, he gathers the Infinity Gems to elevate himself to her level, and in an offering to her, he famously snaps his fingers and kills half the entire universe. And this version of Thanos we've seen in the Infinity Gauntlet comic has been featured in various media, mostly video games, such as Marvel Superheroes in the arcades and on the PlayStation. That's a fighting game where a whole bunch of heroes get together, and it was made by Capcom, and you know, it's just kind of Street Fighter-ish. Had really nice animation and stuff. And then another game that features Thanos prominently is Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems, also made by Capcom, which is more of an action platformer than a fighting game. I have to assume that these games featured Thanos due to the infamy of the storyline, because it's a very popular storyline among comic book fans. And for good reason. It's really hard to get more evil than snapping your fingers on a whim to please your lover and then just wiping out half the universe as an offering to her. Try to think of something more evil. It's hard. That said, we don't really see, you know, the blip, as the movies call it, happen in the video games. And you only see it happen in the movies and the comic book. And probably for good reason. It's kind of a touchy subject, that kind of thing, you know, death and all, you know, wiping out half the world. Despite being featured in comics, cards, and video games, it was actually really hard to get an action figure of Thanos for the longest time. I remember that the first action figure we saw of Thanos was a release in the Fantastic Four toy line based on the 1994 Fantastic Four animated series. Which is ironic, because I've watched half the series now, and I haven't seen him yet, so why he was included in this line is beyond me, but maybe I'll watch the other half of this series and see if he ever shows up, but so far, no, it's not looking good. There's also the matter that he debuted in an Iron Man comic, but I don't think he was on the Iron Man show that was airing at the same time as the Fantastic Four animated series. So, yeah, you know, the irony in that is palpable. This Fantastic Four Thanos was actually pretty decent for the time. I mean, he had a few points of articulation, he had elbow articulation, he had a punching action feature. It was not an elaborate figure, but it was a pretty decent one for a first release. And then the next release we saw for a Thanos action figure was a tie-in to the Silver Surfer animated series, where he got his own figure, and he was kind of stiff, Thanos was. Thanos was a part of the Silver Surfer animated series, so it just made sense for him to be in the line, right? But you look at him, and the oranges look weird, and the golds look kind of out of place along with the oranges. Ah, God, it's an awkward looking figure, and it's really stiff looking, and I don't like it. And after this, all was quiet on the action figure front for Thanos for the longest time. We didn't see another Thanos figure for, God, years. And when Toy Biz started their Marvel Legends line, I thought for sure that at some point, yeah, they're gonna do Thanos. Of course they're gonna do Thanos. I mean, it's called Marvel Legend. He's a legend. How could they not do Thanos? But, you know, years passed by, and Toy Biz made line after line after line, and much to my chagrin, no Thanos. And then Hasbro took over the line, and for a good long time there, still no Thanos. So, yeah, Just not really getting my fill of Thanos, to be honest. Really, really disappointing. That had to be my #1 most wanted figure from the Toy Biz era, and I just wasn't getting them. There was a Thanos figure that was released in 2005 that was a Diamond Select figure. But I don't think the scale was right on it. I don't really know. I never really had the figure. Well, there's no really about it. I never had the figure. I saw it in stores, comic book stores, and it was only available in comic book stores. But I never had it, never bought it. I only maybe glanced at it a few times and said, nah, this just wouldn't look right with my Marvel Legends figures. It would look out of place. So, just walked on by and kept my fingers crossed that maybe they'd get around to it someday. Somebody. Please. And of course, because life does have a funny way of working out, the Avengers movie came out, and not too long after that, we could not get enough Thanos. Just like the Deadpool movie, as soon as he appeared on screen, we just got bombarded with Thanos. Oh boy. Yeah, it's just the funniest thing. You look at Deadpool, no one gave a shit about him before his movie, and now he's got entire goddamn waves devoted to him, making every freaking outfit he's ever worn under the sun. It's kind of great. Loving it. Yeah. Deadpool. But Thanos. We're talking Thanos. This guy right here. Big bad Thanos. But I don't recall ever getting the Infinity Gauntlet era Thanos. You know, the Thanos we know, the Thanos we love, the Thanos we've all wanted for so long until now. So, when I saw this figure released, I said to myself, ooh, yeah, that's what I've been waiting for, God, 20 years. Wow, yeah, I gotta have that. And sure enough, here he is. I had to have him, because finally we got Thanos. We got a proper Marvel Legends Thanos. And not gonna lie, I'm pretty happy about that, pretty happy. He's a standalone deluxe Marvel Legend. But there's the question here, the big question. How does he stack up? Well, right off the bat, he's $40. And I'm gonna tell you right now, this is not a $40 figure in my mind. He should be $20 like everybody else. Not seeing a lot in the package here that screams that this is worth $40. It comes with a head it doesn't need and changeable hands, but no changeable gauntlet. The figure's large, but it isn't so large that it justifies the $40 price tag. I mean, it's not that much bigger than a standard figure, and to be honest, you could probably fit this guy in a standard Marvel Legends box. At the very least, you could definitely fit him in a Toy Biz era Marvel Legends box. So, you know, they shrunk the boxes over the years, and that seems more like Hasbro's bad than anything else. For the price, Hasbro really should have included Death with him, because that would have made this worth $40. And let's be honest here, it's Thanos. And we're talking the Infinity Gauntlet. How do you have Thanos without Lady Death? Oh my god. It's inconceivable to me that he would just not come with Lady Death, especially when she's pictured on the back of the packaging. For $40, Hasbro should have included Lady Death and jettisoned the unnecessary head. Let's be honest about this. Do we really need that head? It doesn't appear in the Infinity Gauntlet, so that's a hard no, we don't need it. And you know, Death is pictured on the back of the packaging with Thanos, and Lady Death seems kind of important to the character of Thanos. So having him without her is, not great. She is really important to the character and the storyline that they pulled this guy from, to just leave her out. So I gotta say, at first glance here, Hasbro's already shit the bed on a couple of different fronts. Overall, I'd say the sculpt is really good. To be fair, this is the Thanos I know and love, sans Gauntlet. His appearance is excellent. The face is a perfect representation of his arrogant mid-battle hubris, and he is a thick boy, ready to sit on any puny superheroes foolish enough to challenge his godhood. His articulation's okay. I'm personally used to Toy Biz's articulation, but Hasbro's been making Marvel Legends for, what, 14 years now? Something like that? So I won't hold the lack of hand or foot articulation against him. That said, gotta say, McFarlane flexes them joints on his DC Multiverse toys, so you know, just saying, his toes have articulation. Even though there's no toe articulation, the ankle articulation makes up for it. The swivel is nuts, and I got him in some really cool poses. The hip and shoulder joints are pretty good too. You'd think the armor and tunic would get in his way, but Hasbro used soft plastic for them, so it works quite nicely. It's not bad at all. Of all the joints on Big Bad Thanos, the weakest are the hands and the head. The wrists barely move, and it's a huge letdown, but worse is the head. It doesn't really move at all. You know you fucked up when the Thing from Toy Biz's second series back in 2002 moved his head better than a toy 19 years in the future. On the other hand, we got the iconic finger snap hand, but you know, that alone doesn't justify the price point. Come on. The rest of his joints are satisfactory. They're serviceable. The elbows are single jointed with a swivel, and a little disappointing there. And his knees don't have much range, but I don't see these as being such a big problem unless you do some really extreme poses. To the figure's credit, the joints are pinless, so it looks very, very clean. And I like that. It's a nice touch. That may account for some of the lack of articulation, but I gotta say, not feeling too bad about it. I like the figure even though it doesn't have the most articulation in some areas. I can't shake the feeling that this is a $20 figure with a $40 price tag. Hasbro could have included a couple more heads that are appropriate for the series that Thanos here is based on, like an angry face when the heroes are challenging him, or a distraught face when he's defeated. They could have included an actual replaceable gauntlet for his hand that the Infinity Gauntlet could have gone on, and a figure of Lady Death would have been very nice too. And I really think that those three things altogether would have definitely justified the total price tag. That would have been perfect. The head that Hasbro included would have been good in the Toy Biz era, where they were doing figures that were kind of all-encompassing versions of the character that they were portraying in the package. But in this era of Marvel Legends and now DC Multiverse, what we're seeing are specific snapshots from different eras of comics and movies. And with that in mind, accuracy matters. So on accuracy points, they didn't exactly nail it on Thanos, unfortunately, and for that, it's really disappointing. It feels kind of half-assed to what should have been a 10 out of 10 knock out of the park figure. They kind of dropped the ball, Hasbro did, and you know, I still like the figure. It's a really good representation of Thanos despite these points, but it really could have used a little bit more effort. I'm gonna also add that this sort of thing would have passed for maybe an obscure character, but Thanos is really famous now. Everybody knows who Thanos is. Everybody. So for Hasbro to just kind of shit the bed on Infinity Gauntlet Thanos, ooh, that stings. That's boy. What's my final call for this one? Pick it up for less than $40 if you can. It really feels like a rip-off at $40. I would recommend, if you can, paying $20 for it, because it looks like a $20 figure to me. If you want to check out my other content, be sure you check me out on Twitch Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you appreciate what I do, please consider subscribing today. It'd really help me out. Anyway, guys, I'll see you again real soon. And until next time, thanks for watching, and with love from me to you, bye-bye.